You're watching CBC TV 8 in beautiful Barbados.
Good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and in our news, the police crime-fighting strategies said to be paying off. Some schools undergoing repairs may not start the new term on time. Support for local pork producers that they can fully supply the local market. And in sports, the Barbados under-23s through to the second round of the football Olympic qualifier.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
In our top story, Police Commissioner Tyrone Griffith says the Royal Barbados Police Force's crime prevention strategies are working. And with the Cropover season set to climax in the coming weeks, he says the force will continue its work in the area of intelligence and patrols.
I'm sure the policies that we have in place are working and working well, and would have contributed to the reduction. I hope that our young men especially are seeing the need to change. I hope so. I believe there are some long-term measures that need to take effect. But I'm satisfied that we are in control of things. Cropover is coming up, and we are really going to be going all out to ensure that our visitors and our locals enjoy the Cropover and without any real hiccups.
Well, Commissioner Griffith was speaking at the presentation ceremony for the new beach uniforms for special constables. There he also indicated crime against visitors had decreased.
In 2014, we were at some 295 crimes, reported visitor crimes, and at that time, visitor arrivals was around 1.2 million. And now we are somewhere like 1.45 million in 2018. And that crime rate came down to about 215, and it's still on a downward trend, which has occurred over the last 5 years, even though more and more visitors are coming to our shores.
The Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, Kirk Humphrey, is calling on Barbadians to come up with local alternatives to the banned plastic products. The minister made the call during the opening ceremony of a fish silage workshop at the Argentinian Embassy. He says there is no need for Barbadians to look to others for solutions to the problems facing our society.
In relation to the ban on plastics, I've heard people say, well, these containers don't exist, and of course I've spoken to the level of the fluorine in the containers and what's on the international market. But I look forward to being and hopefully working with Argentina, working with the UN agencies, to be able then to innovate home and to build the kind of containers here, so that we don't have to import the containers, to really use what we have to tackle Barbadian problems.
Efforts to unearth pieces of history in the Caribbean are being affected by climate change. That's according to the president of the International Association for Caribbean Archaeology, Jay Haviser. He says it's a reality archaeologists cannot ignore.
The sites are being affected, but not only that, the people are being affected. Lifeways are changing. Where they can live is being changed. And we have to also be at the spearhead of investigating, understanding, and trying to help provide dynamic models for dealing with climate change.
And Mr. Haviser was speaking during the opening ceremony of the 28th Congress of the International Association for Caribbean Archaeology. The theme for the 5-day event is re-examining South-Caribbean archaeology in the 21st century. Mr. Haviser says there's still a piece of Caribbean history which has not been sufficiently explored.
The archaeology of the Asian Caribbean is yet to come in a forceful way. Some studies have started. But the Asian elements are part of the Caribbean fabric, and we as archaeologists should also be taking steps to look in that direction.
Well, some changes may have to be made to the start dates of the next school term. Minister of Education Santia Bradshaw made that revelation in the House of Assembly this morning. Lisa Broom has been following the day's proceedings and joins us live now. Good evening to you, Lisa. Now, did the minister give an actual reason for what might be a late start?
Yes, Lisa, she did. So, as you know, each summer repairs are carried out to the schools across the island. And while that work has started, Minister Bradshaw said there have been some setbacks. But she did reveal there's a possibility work on some institutions may be completed on or before the allotted time, and an unlikely scenario where others may have to reopen later.
Maybe a week later, maybe 2 weeks later. But the reality is that it is either I allow the work to take place in this particular time frame so that there is limited disruption during the actual school term. It is one or the other. The other reality that we've come to face, Madam Chair, is that schools have become year-round institutions. Schools are no longer closed for the vacation. And I know the minister responsible for youth had some concerns this year because the attempt to basically repair the schools has resulted in a situation where there were less summer camps available to his ministry.
And Lisa, besides discussing the issues related to the school's refurbishment, the House also resolved itself into Standing Finance Committee to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of the island. Now, that simply means they changed up the format of the debate and it gave them a bit more room to examine the specific clauses of the resolution before them. Now, during that session, Minister Bradshaw noted that Barbados currently has an ad hoc approach to special needs education, which she says cannot continue. And to this end, she's working on a document to take to Cabinet that will guide government on inclusive education.
It has to be an approach where we try to ensure that teachers in particular are trained in special needs education as the norm and not as the exception. Because that is what now society, Barbadian society, now dictates. That you have to be able, if you have students who are learning differently, that you have to be able to have no differentiated instruction. So what does it mean? The teacher has to be trained in that area, or at least have the introduction to be able to understand and to identify what the problems are with the particular child, and to be able to make the referral to have those issues addressed, ma'am.
Minister Bradshaw also noted that despite money being spent to train teachers in special needs, many of them are not teaching in that area.
And there are institutions which require persons with the background that don't have them, ma'am. So it is now going to require, and I think that we have to let the public understand what we have found, but give the assurance as well that we are seeking to address it in a systematic way. And I want people to appreciate that it is not going to be an overnight process.
Minister of Youth and Community Empowerment Adrian Ford wants Barbados to move to a stage where every teacher is trained in special needs education.
And until we get serious about this, because at the end of the day, the next 10, 15 years, when history reflects itself, I know that you had an August gentleman here who said that history is when something is done for the first time. But when history is reflected upon and is visited upon, we as a government of the day must pass that moral test, which speaks to the way how we treat those that have challenges, and as I say, are differently able.
Mr. Ford also called for greater parental involvement in the schools, and he wants the various institutions to embrace their respective communities.
So oftentimes there are schools and communities that just really truly do not involve the community into activities that they do, whether it's repairs of the schools, whether it is these speech days, and I'm saying to the headmasters and headmistresses, when you have this speech day and the events going on at school, reach out to the member of parliament in the area.
Minister of Health and Wellness Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic wants greater attention paid to developmental education, as well as the provision of facilities that cater to people with disabilities. He also commended charities for their assistance and threw out a challenge to all Barbadians.
I believe Madam Deputy Chair, that even though the government of Barbados has the responsibility to provide for these institutions and for these persons, I believe that we as a nation must come to the realization that whether it is through in-kind assistance or financial or material assistance, that we can do a lot to provide equipment and all of the facilities that are required for these people to be able to live out their lives. And that goes even to our elderly care facilities.
So, Lisa, that's a snapshot of what was discussed in Parliament today. They did discuss some other matters, which we will bring to you in subsequent newscasts as they prepared for their summer recess. So we'll bring you those stories in subsequent newscasts.
Sign up today to catch all the major Cropover events live online on cropover.cbc.bb. We've got you covered. Soca Monarch Finals, $53 or $26 US. Pick of the Crop Finals, $62 or $30 US. And Grand Kadooment, $22 Barbados dollars or $11 US. Don't be left out. Log on now to cropover.cbc.bb and book. CBC, taking Cropover to the world.
Already facing a sharp increase in their water bills, local pig farmers are crying out for urgent relief from the additional pressure now being caused by the presence of more imported frozen pork into the market. In fact, Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society, James Paul, wants a moratorium on the importation of pork as farmers face mounting costs that they say threaten their livelihoods. A cross-section of farmers that included the largest pork producer on the island and some medium and smaller pork farmers all met at the BAS Grotto headquarters yesterday to vent their frustration and to call for fairer treatment of that sector.
We need at this point in time to have a moratorium on imports to those persons who are not prepared to show in any substantial way that they are prepared to support local producers of pork. It is time that we move away from talk only and no action on the part of some. And I think that at a time when jobs are at stake in the industry, basically, and people's investments are at stake in the industry, basically, that some action needs to be taken.
Mr. Paul says the BAS would also like to see the re-establishment of the Pork Production and Marketing Committee, which has not met in about 5 years. He says that body, which was previously an arm of the Ministry of Agriculture, brought together all of the major stakeholders with an interest in the local pork sector and helped to ensure that the best interest of pig farmers was preserved. Now, also speaking at that press briefing was Gay Reid, the manager of the St. Thomas-based Barnwell Farms, which is the largest single pig supplier on the island. He says on top of a 150% rise in the farm's water bill since the start of this year, imported pork is causing another major headache.
Our water bill going from $6,000 a month to over $15,000 a month. There's no way we can survive or we can pay that water bill. I would like the Ministry of Agriculture along with the government to see what they can do to help the farmers with the water.
Robok Street is set to have a complete makeover by the beginning of next year. Former Independent Senator Sir Trevor Carmichael sits on the Robok Street Revitalization Committee, and he says it will have a fantastic facelift by January 2020.
We intend to repaint the street. In the case of some persons will volunteer to do it themselves, and others who are not able to, we will seek to raise the necessary capital to do that, so that when 2020 starts in January, we will have Robok Street ready, bright and brisk to meet that vision. You must remember that one of the first Calypsonians, and I won't call his name, I leave people to guess, one of the first Calypsonians emerged from Robok Street. And Robok Street has been the leader in so many other areas, not only in the arts, but in commerce in Barbados.
The countdown is on to the Welcome to Marsville Trip to Mars show, which comes off this Friday at the Kensington Oval. Organizer Omar Marsville McQuilkin says, contrary to rumors which have been circulating, that show is still going ahead as scheduled. Among the main acts set to perform at the event is Trinidadian soca singer and songwriter Nyla Blackman. She arrived at the Grantley Adams International Airport this afternoon. Marsville told the CBC News he's fortunate to have sponsors coming on board, including CBC's radio station 98.1 The One.
Preparation is looking fine. Band is ready and ready to shout down. The whole thing looking nice. Our sponsorship right now is, well, we have doers on board. We have Remy Martin. We have 98.1 The One, the official media sponsor on board. So we're looking very good.
Regional stories now. Jamaica and the Caribbean Cement Limited have inked a deal that will see the company converting old tires from waste to energy. The tire project was pitched not as a money-making venture, but one meant to make a positive contribution to the environment. CVM TV reports.
No longer will old tires be burnt or used illicitly for use in the scrap metal trade. Under the MOU, the used tires will be removed from the Riverton landfill on a trial basis of 40 days, after which contracts will be signed for a full rollout of 3 to 5 years. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, in giving his support to the project, says the country's environmental agenda is at the forefront of his administration. He adds that if they were to only look at the economics of these initiatives, then they would not work.
If we were to put the cost of the damage to our environment, including the cost of climate change, then we would see that these projects are imperatives and cannot merely be viewed from an accounting perspective.
Peter Donkersloot Ponce, General Manager of Caribbean Cement, explains the conversion process will be environmentally friendly.
In an incinerator, you still produce a byproduct, which is the ashes. When you burn it in the kiln, the ashes just come out as the ashes of our other fuels and get blended into our process. So it does not produce a byproduct, it does not produce toxic gases, and it is the best and most environmentally friendly way.
Over the next 40 days, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, will supply 5 truckloads of used tires to Carib Cement.
Tens of thousands of Guyanese have been registered as the Elections Commission continues with its registration exercise. House-to-house registration got underway last weekend and will end in another 3 months.
Despite some challenges, Public Relations Officer of the Ghana Elections Commission, Yolanda Ward, said enumerators were able to register over 20,000 persons countrywide over the past 2 days. She said the Commission has had reports that some persons, when approached by the GCOM staff, have blatantly refused to participate in the process. Ward was speaking during an interview on the radio program Trending and Vibes 100.1. She used the opportunity to appeal to persons to cooperate during this process.
We've had some challenges on the ground that we are working to rectify as much as we could, and that is basically imploring persons to register, having persons to understand that registration is a legal requirement and the importance of them being registered.
The Commission has established 262 cluster offices countrywide where residents are allowed to visit daily to be guided throughout the process. Ward also took the opportunity to clear up common misconceptions.
I just want to clarify that this exercise is, as it says, house-to-house registration. It therefore means that registration will only be done at permanent places of residence. So you cannot be registered at a shop, even though you might have your source documents with you.
Over in Grenada now, a former Attorney General is seeking to clear the air on why his name is appearing on a government bill almost 2 years since he left office. Reports surfaced recently the government was footing the bill for the monthly telephone bill of 2 former members of Parliament. The government has since taken action to remove people no longer eligible for inclusion in its cell phone plans. We have a report from CBN.
Former Attorney General Cajetan Hood is challenging reports that he is one of several former government officials still in possession of a government phone. According to him, he was never in possession of a government phone but benefited from a free service with his personal phone.
I asked permission to use my number. My number never changed. There was a number which I signed on to digital with 5379218. I asked permission to use my number while I was Attorney General. I was given that permission. I did not sign any document transferring my number to the government of Grenada in terms of ownership. It never happened. And I was given, and I asked permission to use my phone. I was allowed to use my phone, and I was allowed to use my number.
Mr. Hood, who served as Attorney General from 2013 to 2017, says following his stint in that office, he made several attempts to remove himself from the government plan.
And I will tell you this, up to this date, nobody from the government has sent to me any notice saying that they had to pay a cent for my cell phone package. Nobody has done that. What's it? On at least 7 occasions, I contacted the Ministry of Legal Affairs. As a matter of fact, the ministry contacted me to ask me to return my phone. I said to them, I don't have a government phone. I never took a government phone, so something is wrong. I reminded them, however, that there is a government package still on my phone. I want it to be removed. On at least 3 occasions, I advised the Ministry of Legal Affairs of that.